Hello and welcome back to the Supply Chain Dialogues. My name is Daniel Helmick and I'm joined again by my AI co-host Amy.
Hi, everybody.
Today we have a special treat for you. So let's assume you are a medium-sized to small company and you know that you need to get going on achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Regulation required, customers ask for it. Even in your family and friends, at least the younger generation, they all ask what's going on in your company. Different than in large corporations, you do not have that many experts to analyze the situation and give you recommendations of what to do. And you have a healthy apprehension to use consultants. Are you exhausted by conversations about half-truths? Just want to get it done and get on with normal business? We got your back. Today, we will give you a tour de force in exceedingly detailed segments. First, we focus on an overview on the different scopes of greenhouse gas emissions, which is scope 1, 2, and 3. In segment 2, we give you a general direction, what you can do to get started. In the final segment, we go deep into each and every category and subcategory which unfortunately exist to get to net zero. Here we do not stop at simply listing what can be done, but as well discuss of how to do it. Call it a free-of-charge DIY guide to getting things done. Now, here's some instructions that you might want to consider. So first, we recommend to listen to the episode. Then, if you agree that there is some meaningful help given in this audio format, you can read the written transcript on our website under this episode. And a tip for all people that struggle a bit with English, especially the one that we speak, copy the transcript and translate it via Google Translate or ChatGPT or any of its AI cousins into your language. You can even ask some of them to read it then to you in your language. You will be surprised how good many of the voices are already. Just listen to Amy. And voila, you have your plan and can get started. You're welcome. So, grab a coffee, put on the kettle, settle into your car seat, or if you are the active type, slip into your training outfit, and let's get started. We start with an overview of greenhouse gas emission scopes. Understanding these scopes helps because they form the backbone of how companies measure, report, and strategize their carbon footprints. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol, a widely used international accounting tool, classifies emissions into 3 scopes. Now, let's just break them down.
Scope 1 encompasses direct emissions from sources that a company owns or controls. This includes emissions released from company facilities or vehicles. Think of it as the emissions that occur right in your backyard. Examples include emissions from burning fuel in a company's fleet or emissions from industrial processes like chemical production.
Scope 1 is about direct control and immediate impact, the emissions you can see. What about Scope 2?
Scope 2 concerns indirect emissions associated with producing via purchased energy, such as electricity, heating, cooling, and steam. While companies don't directly produce these emissions, the generation of the energy they consume does. It's like drawing on resources from afar. The energy flows into your operations, but the emissions are on another site's books.
Scope 2 emphasizes how energy choices influence overall carbon footprints, and it brings us to the expansive Scope 3.
Scope 3 includes all other indirect emissions in a company's value chain. This is often the most complex and significant scope, covering everything from purchased goods and services, transportation and distribution, waste disposal, and business travel. It extends beyond your operations to every corner of your business activities. These emissions are generally between 65 to 90% of a company's total emissions. Unfortunately, legislation and regulations focus more on the minor scopes 1 and 2, which are easier to control but less impactful.
Scope 3 can initially seem daunting due to the breadth and indirect nature of the whole topic. However, it's where business can have a massive impact through creative solutions and collaborations. Every product bought, every journey taken, every mile traveled has a footprint. Understanding these nuances is vital as we minimize our environmental impact. In the next segment now, we will dive deeper into each scope and discuss concrete steps towards getting going. We start again with Scope 1, direct emissions. As mentioned, these are emissions from company-owned or controlled sources representing a business direct carbon footprint. Scope 1 emissions are the ones your company has the most immediate control over. It's as well the easiest. Let's outline some familiar sources of these emissions.
Scope 1 emissions often come from the combustion of fossil fuels in company facilities and vehicles. Think of natural gas used for heating buildings or powering industrial boilers, or diesel fuel used in emergency generators. In mobile combustion, we look at gasoline and diesel used in company car fleets and fuel used in company-owned ships, planes, or industrial trucks. Then we have process emissions, such as emissions from manufacturing processes or fumes released during on-site industrial activities. There are also other emissions, but I will leave them here for now.
Addressing these emissions is crucial for companies striving for sustainability. Let's talk about strategies organizations can employ to reduce Scope 1 emissions on their journey towards net zero. One of the most effective strategies is transitioning to renewable energy sources. For instance, replacing traditional gas boilers with electric alternatives powered by solar or wind can drastically reduce emissions. Or let's look at Google, who just announced that they are going with small nuclear stations to get to the point of net zero by 2030, which is in their overall strategy. There's a lot that can be done. And in some countries, like for example in France, where there is a high level of nuclear energy in the mix, you might be nearly there already.
Another impactful strategy is enhancing energy efficiency within operations. This can include optimizing routes for delivery trucks to reduce fuel usage or implementing energy management systems to monitor and control energy consumption in facilities.
Business can invest in new technologies like electric or hybrid vehicles or replace older, more polluting models. This transition can be phased over time but significantly impacts the long run. Furthermore, industrial process emissions can be tackled by investing in cleaner, more efficient systems or retrofitting existing equipment to reduce energy use and improve performance. We will get into this in more detail later in Section 3. This is just an overview.
Lastly, regular maintenance and tuning of equipment are crucial. Ensuring all machinery operates optimally can prevent unnecessary emissions and improve lifespan, reducing overall environmental impact.
If you focus on these practical steps, companies can lower their Scope 1 emissions and position themselves on the path to net zero. You have already noticed that every solution has as well the opportunity to reduce costs in your shop. So 2 birds with 1 stone if done with a bit of upfront thinking. Now it's time to spotlight Scope 2, indirect energy emissions. These emissions come from generating the electricity, heating, cooling, and steam business purchases and consume. While not directly produced by the company, they are a significant aspect of the carbon footprint. Let's discuss how companies can measure and manage their Scope 2 emissions.
Measuring Scope 2 emissions begins with understanding and tracking energy consumption. This involves analyzing utility bills and identifying where and how much energy is used. Most organizations utilize energy audits as a critical tool to identify inefficiencies and areas with potential savings.
Once a company has a clear picture of its energy use, the next step is to implement energy management system. These systems track real-time consumption and help set benchmarks and targets for energy reduction. It's not that difficult.
Transitioning to renewable energy sources like solar, wind, or hydroelectric power can significantly reduce Scope 2 emissions. Companies might consider purchasing green energy from utilities or investing in on-site renewable energy installations. Power purchase agreements, PPAs, and renewable energy certificates, RECs, are also popular methods to ensure that the energy consumed is offset by renewable generation.
And let's not forget energy efficiency, which is crucial alongside renewable transition. Simple measures such as installing LED lighting, optimizing HVAC systems, and using energy-efficient appliances can drastically reduce energy demand. For many companies, this is the low-hanging fruit for reduction of emission and operational cost.
Combining renewable energy with robust energy efficiency measures creates a powerful synergy. This approach reduces emissions, boosts resilience against energy price volatility, and enhances energy security. Plus, It presents an opportunity to showcase corporate responsibility and innovation to stakeholders and customers.
So, up to now, if you get the changes we discussed, you already work on complying with respective laws and regulations. If you break it down, it isn't that much work. I'm always astonished how much time the legislator gives the companies to do this. If you recall the last podcast where we painstakingly looked at the climate-related events in this year and the last year alone, you might think that governments would protect us better by ramping up the timelines. Well, there is a circle of concern and the circle of influence. We will focus now on Scope 3 to give you our tips in our circle of influence. Why are these emissions so complex, you ask? It's because they're spread across various stages and involve numerous entities beyond the company's direct control. Let's unpack Scope 3 now.
As mentioned before, Scope 3 emissions capture a wide range of activities, such as transportation and distribution, both of products you buy from suppliers and those you send to customers. It also includes waste generated in operations, purchased goods and services, employee commuting, business travel, and even the emissions tied to the life cycle of the products you sell, from production to eventual disposal or recycling.
As you can see, the interconnected nature of these activities makes Scope 3 particularly complex to measure and manage. It's about understanding your total environmental impact, which ultimately requires collecting data from various external sources. Today, there are enough companies out there that can do an excellent job for helping you to get this done. I occasionally work with CarbMe, CARBMEE, a company in Germany that does this excellently, and no, I'm not getting paid to say that. They're just a bunch of excellent driven people that support some of the best companies in Germany and Europe, many world-renowned brands with brilliant expertise and software. Now back to the topic. Amy, what are some practical approaches for measuring and reducing Scope 3 emissions?
To start, a business must gather detailed data and establish comprehensive reporting frameworks. This often involves working closely with suppliers to collect data on carbon footprints and encouraging transparent reporting. Many companies adopt sustainability software solutions or platforms that facilitate this data collection and reporting, like Daniel pointed out. Once you have the data, focusing on reduction efforts is critical. One approach is encouraging suppliers to adopt more sustainable practices. By implementing green procurement policies, you can significantly reduce emissions across your supply chain.
Another strategy involves optimizing logistics. This could mean improving the efficiency of transportation networks to cut down emissions or adopting more sustainable packaging solutions to reduce waste, or do both. Additionally, promoting sustainable behavior among employees, such as incentivizing public transportation or virtual meetings over business travel, can help curb Scope 3 emissions. We will get more of this later when we really peel the onion.
Collaboration is crucial here. Forming partnerships and engaging in industry-wide initiatives can amplify efforts exponentially. Consider joining sustainability networks or alliances where best practices and innovations are shared to tackle these emissions collectively.
While Scope 3 may seem overwhelming, as we mentioned before, due to the scope and complexity, it also represents the most significant opportunity for business to make long-term meaningful impact. So far, we explored the intricacies of greenhouse gas emission scopes, and now it's time to turn our focus towards the ultimate goal: achieving net zero emissions. Transitioning to net zero is no small feat, but it's not rocket science, so let's explore the path forward.
Before we do this, let's get some grounding on some facts the listeners might not know. I would like to cover the cost and efficiency of solar panels and wind turbines, and then provide some info about the size of the cost problem we are trying to solve. All of this will be good news.
Sure. Let's start with solar panels then.
The cost of solar panels, including commercial installations, has decreased substantially over the past decade. Since 2014, there has been a 70% reduction in the cost of commercial rooftop PV systems. A large portion of the cost decline can be attributed to a dramatic decrease in solar module prices. In 2014, the price per watt for a solar panel was around £2.50. By 2024, this figure had dropped to approximately £1.50 per watt, representing a decrease of about 40% over this period. The installed price of solar systems, including commercial ones, also dropped by 26% from 2013 to 2022. This reduction applies to the entire system, not just the panels themselves. By 2024, solar PV had become an attractive proposition for commercial users, partly due to these cost reductions and partly due to high energy prices.
What happened to the cost and efficiency side of wind energy?
Wind energy costs have decreased dramatically since 1980, from over 55 cents per kilowatt hour to under 3 cents per kilowatt hours in the United States, for example. The cost reduction trend has continued in recent years, making wind energy increasingly competitive with traditional energy sources. Let's look at some facts. The average capacity factor, which measures power plant productivity, has risen from 22% for turbines installed before 1998 to nearly 35% today. Since 1999, the average turbine generating capacity has increased significantly. Turbines installed in the last few years averaged 2.15 megawatts in capacity. The future also looks bright. A recent study suggests that near-commercial wind turbine innovations could unlock an additional 80% economically viable wind energy capacity as soon as 2025. Technological advancements like longer blades, taller towers, and low-specific power turbines are expected to make wind power feasible in regions previously considered unsuitable. Nothing stays the same, and more innovation is highly probable with the investment poured into these renewable energies.
You also mentioned the size of the problem we are trying to solve. What did you mean?
Many people see net zero in Scope 1 or 2 as a significant cost problem. This is fascinating since it has nothing to do with facts. Companies' reluctance to engage does not compute.
So, what are the facts?
You know about product cost estimation and cost breakdowns, right? For those who are not familiar with it, here is a short explanation. Cost estimating is the process of forecasting the financial and other resources needed to complete a project or a product within a defined scope and schedule. A cost breakdown structure allows companies to itemize different product or project costs for each life cycle stage, often using methods such as analogy, parametric, engineering, or actual cost estimation, depending on the project's maturity and available data.
I know cost estimating and cost breakdowns well. We use them mainly in the automotive industry to understand the probable cost of the products and services we were buying. They were also helpful in teardown workshops, where you took competitors' products apart and estimated the cost for each part. We were pretty good at that and could get down to 1 to 3% of the actual cost of the product.
Now, when you were cost estimating products, what was the average percentage that energy cost played in a discretely manufactured product?
Negligible. The energy cost, except for steel or aluminium products, as the end product, was in the range of just 1 to 3%.
Now, what would you say if a supplier came to you to tell you that they needed to increase their prices since they moved to renewable energies and the cost went up overall?
Firstly, I would be annoyed that the supplier would think that little of our competence in this matter. Next, I would ask them what the increase in cost, whether it's OPEX or CAPEX, is in their mind. Then, we would look at the overall cost of their energy in the product. In the end, we would come to a delta of maybe 0.3 to maybe 1%. Although, if done right, the cost should be the same or lower in most countries. Maybe except in China, where all energy is so strongly subsidized. In any case, I then would look at them and would give them 3 measures that any good company could take to compensate for these cost increases. And that's old business, that's nothing new. First, I would be astonished if they did not have internal efficiency targets of 3 to 5% overall in their cost yearly. Next, I would recommend optimizing their management layers and ask them finally in today's world how they use AI to streamline processes in their back offices. All of this should give them more than enough opportunity to compensate for this minimal cost increase that they were seeing, which can be avoided if managed from the beginning effectively.
You provided precisely the facts that I think many companies do not fully comprehend when discussing Scope 1 and 2 net zero achievements. The cost, as you say so often, is chicken manure.
Well, I use a different word with chicken, but let's keep this podcast clean. There is another factor to reduce the potential cost increase for investments into greenhouse gas neutral equipment and processes. Subsidies. More and more governments see it as necessary to provide tax credits or hardcore subsidies to companies that move to sustainable production. Let's take Germany as an example. The government provides, under what it's called Climate Protection Contracts Act, currently 15 company subsidies up to 2.8 billion euros. From a taxpayer perspective, it is at least a subsidy that tries to secure a livable future for the next generations. Much different than some of the shenanigans our governments pay for with our taxes. So, equipped with all these facts, let's tackle each scope in net zero in now section 3. We go the full Monty. Where do we start?
We again start at scope 1, and here with the electrification of manufacturing processes. Companies can replace fossil fuel-powered equipment with electric alternatives, especially for low and medium heat processes. As mentioned, efficiency has increased and cost has decreased significantly.
Depending on the local electricity mix, this can reduce operational emissions by up to 90%. Examples include switching to electrical furnaces, talked about this, boilers and heat pumps for space and water heating.
Next, we look for energy efficiency improvements. Upgrading or replacing existing manufacturing equipment with more energy-efficient models can help a lot on the road to net zero. Additionally, implementing advanced process control systems and energy management systems to optimize energy use, while conducting regular maintenance and repairs to ensure equipment operates at peak efficiency.
We then have renewable energy integration. For example, you can install on-site renewable energy systems like solar panels, which we talked about, or wind turbines to power manufacturing operations. If you are a large operator, you can as well look at small nuclear power plants. This can significantly reduce your reliance on fossil fuels for stationary combustion. And why not consider combined heat and power, which is called CHP systems, using renewable fuels for both electricity and heat generation. Transitioning to low-carbon fuels can also help if you use it a lot. So for processes that cannot be easily electrified, such as lower carbon alternatives like biomass, biogas, or green hydrogen, you can as well implement biodiesel or other biofuels for any company-owned vehicles or machinery. I'm pretty sure that locally you have providers who would love to have a corporate client like you in their portfolio.
Next is the topic of fugitive emissions reduction. Try to minimize leakages from refrigeration systems and other equipment that use high global warming potential gases. Replace high GWP refrigerants with lower emission alternatives like CO2-based or propane-based gases. Finally, rigorous maintenance and monitoring programs should be implemented to detect and repair leaks quickly. A leak in your production process or your products can attract unwelcome media attention that no one needs these days.
Not so difficult if you take it one by one. Let's use the same approach as Scope 2 to get to net zero. So Amy, what shall we do for Scope 2?
5 main topics can get Scope 2 to net zero. First, switch to low-carbon energy suppliers. Choose energy suppliers that invest in and provide renewable energy sources. This can quickly reduce Scope 2 emissions without changing business practices or improving energy efficiency. If your local provider is not there yet, use power purchase agreements, also called PPAs. Sign contracts with power producers to purchase renewable electricity at agreed prices for set periods. This can provide access to renewable energy even when on-site or near-site generation is not feasible. PPAs can produce up to 90% less CO2 per kilowatt hour generated compared to conventional sources.
Beside these two measures, look at energy-efficient measures. Upgrade to energy-efficient equipment and lighting systems, optimize heating, ventilation and air conditioning, HVAC systems, and implement energy management systems to monitor and control energy use. Sounds familiar? Sure it does. Since while Scope 1 and 2 is defined slightly differently, the solutions are often the same. Hence, you will not be astonished that as well here on-site renewable energy production will help you on your way to net zero. Install solar panels or other renewable energy systems on company premises. This can as well significantly reduce reliance on grid electricity and associated emissions because, let's face it, the grids are no longer as stable as our governments try to make us believe. So consider options like rooftop photovoltaics, which can result in up to 90% lower CO2 emissions per kilowatt.
Finally, the fifth dimension to get to net zero in Scope 2 is to improve building efficiency. Check and enhance insulation in manufacturing facilities and offices. Implement smart building technologies to optimize energy use. Daniel's old employer, ABB, and its competitors have brilliant solutions here. Finally, use passive solar design and natural lighting where possible to reduce energy demand.
Let's continue our tour de force through all scopes and what we can do to get to net zero in each of them. Now, let's look in detail into the 600-pound gorilla, Scope 3, and what it takes here.
To achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions in Scope 3, companies need to address each of the 15 categories defined by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol.
I start with my favorite, and as well the biggest portion in most Scope 3s in companies, purchased goods and services. First and foremost, and we talked about this as well in the past, you have to implement sustainable procurement policies. And it's very simple at the end. You have to say, without a clear plan and actual results, dear supplier, we will say bye-bye by 2030, for example. Clearly, you need to do your homework to find another viable and climate-neutral supplier. Come on, it is still 6 years until then. To get the results you want, engage suppliers to reduce their emissions. Studies show that just sending your suppliers a questionnaire does not get them where you want them. Work with them. Together, collaborate. But instead of building internal resources, point the suppliers to readily available material on the web and good suppliers that can help them. Again, a nod to CarbMe, the German company that can work as well with all of your suppliers. When we look internally, the next one needs some help from other departments beside the customers of the suppliers we talked about. You can switch to low carbon or recycled materials, which is an excellent project for your younger R&D personnel to earn their spores. Have them work with their counterparts in manufacturing, procurement, supply chain, and sales. Besides doing the right thing, you will form networks in the company along the value chain that will hold with these youngsters for years. Let's remember, more will happen. You need these networks for agile solutions as well in the future. Give R&D and your design departments clear guidance on optimizing product design, on sustainability. This sounds more complicated than it is. Have 2 people in your R&D understand the typical dimensions around design for sustainability. Let them then teach the rest of the team, including the design team. Then, do a design competition with prizes. Gamification will work like a charm. Set conditions like cost effectiveness, maybe even cheaper, innovation, ease of manufacture, etc. Provide time in the respective quality and testing departments to look at the solutions that are being provided. Otherwise, it's very frustrating for these people that came up with the solutions.
Let's talk about the following. Scope 3 subcategory. Investments or CapEx. Here, start to invest in energy-efficient equipment and machinery. Be sure to look beyond your current suppliers. Evaluate the global markets here. The probability is high that your historic suppliers cling too much to the olden ways. Look for new and fresh yet established companies with reasonable solutions. Taiwan, China, Japan, the USA, and Germany might be alternative locations to consider. Or even better, talk with your equipment and machinery suppliers, Ally. They will be thrilled to have continued revenue based on the voice of the customer. And if not, move to other CapEx providers anyway.
Overall, choose suppliers with lower carbon footprints. We will talk about this more, but the story has to be, here are our goals, meet them by day X, or it's my way or the highway, similar like we mentioned before. We were talking before about exchanging equipment for lower energy equipment. This is often the right solution. However, we should not forget that any new machinery has a footprint as well. Instead of buying new, it could be better to expand the lifespan of existing assets through maintenance. I loved well-maintained older equipment in my corporate days. Carbon footprint can be reduced by simply not buying. As well, consider opting for refurbished and second-hand equipment when possible. There are companies in many industries who specialize on used equipment. Let's be honest, do we always really need new furniture in our office buildings? What you can find is amazing when you look at stuff that is already available from bankruptcies. Maybe do not think about this only in your corporate or business life. Before the next trip to IKEA, or your expensive big box furniture store, look online or visit second-hand stores. You will be blown away by the variety of goods you will find at good value. And it's fun.
The next subcategory in Scope 3 is fuel and energy-related activities. Here, you can improve energy efficiency across operations by installing measurement systems that give you data on the use of energy in every step of the production process. Then, sit together with the teams and let them come up with a reduction of, let's say, 50%. Let them think out of the box. You have a lot of excellent brains everywhere in your company. Use their power.
And again, switch to renewable energy sources. Now you know about wind and solar, but depending on where you produce and what's going on around you, the options that you can either tap into or work on yourself are much more significant. Electrical power, geothermal, biomass, tidal and wave, hydrogen, energy storage systems, low-impact hydro, waste to energy from your local municipality or DIY. Ocean thermal energy conversion, which is called OTEC. And really cool, out there are algae-based biofuels, kinetic energy harvesting, micro wind turbines, and solar thermal collectors. And you can also use a bit of cheat by using power purchase agreements, PPAs, or renewable energy certificates, RECs, when installation of what I mentioned before is not feasible, as we discussed already before. There is a world out there. Look into this. This is really interesting stuff.
Implement energy management systems. Here, everybody thinks about production lines and machines. But these energy management systems, meters connected to intelligent switches and software, can reduce energy consumption in buildings, utility systems, process equipment, energy generation and distribution, data centers and IT infrastructure, waste management systems, transport and logistics, quality control, and maintenance systems. There is a whole universe of systems out there that, if smartly used, can quickly get you to net zero.
Finally, optimize transportation and logistics downstreams to customers and warehouses. We cover this in the next point, since the solutions are similar, aside from the direction upstream versus downstream.
The following Scope 3 subcategory is upstream transportation and distribution.
Use more greenhouse gas-efficient transportation modes, like rail instead of road. Modal optimization goes often hand in hand with changes with supply chain planning, inventory management, and warehouse storage patterns. The reason why air freight versus road or sea is used is often unwarranted. With subtle changes in the inventory or supply chain planning parameters, the urgent becomes suddenly a relaxed shipping matter. And yes, manufacturing could not be the only factor to consider when modal patterns are to be established or changed. Look to optimize routes and load factors as well. Go into your loading docks and look at how compact your containers really are, ready for shipment and loaded. And then listen to the reasons the staff gives you or their frustrations. Then fix it. And believe me, it's often as straightforward to be fixed with a little bit of operations and logistics knowledge. And instead of 2 shipments and trucks, you need suddenly just 1. Voila, saving 50% greenhouse gas emissions and cost. I have not yet encountered an impossible shipment situation in my whole professional life that cannot be improved. Why? Because it's the stepchild of any operations. No one spends the time to optimize unless you are called Amazon or the likes.
Consider implementing fleet electrification. Road transportation is not a singular activity. Every transport via road is broken down into at least 3 steps: pickup and outgoing until entering the highway, highway transport, and delivery from the exit highway to the final destination.
While the FMCG industry knows this in depth, discrete manufacturing is less interested and often just waves goodbye when the diesel-fueled trucks leave their loading docks. At least for the most fuel-guzzling stretches outside the highways, EV trucks can be used. And who knows when the big truck companies develop efficient EV truck solutions. You can then as well use it on the highways. The electrification of the fleet can also mean rail. Last time I checked, it runs on electricity, mainly. Here the question only is where they get their electricity from. Let's take Germany again, my favorite country. not the least because I was born there. For the German National Railway, only 60% of electricity is coming from renewable resources. And today they still use about 250 million liters of diesel per year. If you go by rail and you like to be greenhouse gas neutral, make a point to the respective rail management that you are not impressed and that they, being wholly owned by the respective government, have as well to help companies comply with the greenhouse emission regulations that the government has signed for all of us. Thank you very much. The next activity is to encourage suppliers to use low-emission vehicles. Selecting 3 or 4 PLs that clearly focus on climate neutrality in their fleet or their business overall should be a major step in selecting your transportation company. Only if it hurts their revenue as well will everyone start to change, and you as a customer have it in your hand. As well, the topic of reshoring or friendshoring to cut long transportation routes belongs in here. If you buy your materials for your production or finished goods from overseas, you ocean ship it via the most inefficient use of diesel engines and with the worst quality of fuel there is. Yes, slow steaming, shore powering, as well as propeller and hull upgrades made a difference. Still, we let stuff being produced thousands of miles away, often in non-democratic authoritarian countries with less than rigid environmental standards. At the same time, in our region, the unemployment rate, especially with the youth, is way too high. For crying out loud, is it time to think bigger about greenhouse gas emissions than to do the same thing over and over again and hope for a better outcome? Globalization could be followed by a much more thoughtful, greener regionalization of the supply lines. It also helps us in better resilience overall. Remember, climate is changing.
The next subcategory in Scope 3 is waste generated in operations. Here, implementing waste reduction and recycling programs can make a big difference, setting targets and incentives for each organizational area to cut waste and recycle more. But stay moderate with things that make no difference. If you only pick up the waste baskets in your offices twice a week rather than daily, you just increase the smell, not your sustainability in the buildings. Look at production facilities and have local teams work on big, hairy goals. And why not use the waste to heat your buildings? The regional or local municipality may incinerate and share the electricity or warm water with you.
You can as well adopt circular economy principles. This is one of the holy grails in activities around greenhouse gas emission reduction. Many initiatives fail because do-gooders with little to no value chain background dream up ideas that are not discussed in the whole company. I recommend here again evidence-based management. Get all views and knowledge from academia, internal organization, and external stakeholders, including customers, together to tackle this issue. And then pilot test it with your customers. Circularity is possible in many distinct products being produced, but seldom based on just the initiative of the producer. It takes a village, as I say, along the upstream value chain to get this done right. Next, you can compost your organic waste. I've not much to add here, just do it or give it to people who can. And while you do it, partner with waste management companies using low-emission technologies. Go visit your local waste management companies and check out how they use low-emission technologies. And if they don't, partner with 2 of them to get this done and give back some of the benefits they reap, either monetary or like-for-like with energy and heat. Why do I say 2? Because one will be better than the other and they should get 70% of your waste. The other company will work then harder. And there you have it, beautifully. Competition.
Let's get to the exciting topic of business travel, which is part of Scope 3. Encourage virtual meetings and remote work.
First, the lion's share of air travel is done by private travelers, us, not business or military. Still, business travel has a miserable carbon footprint. I traveled around the globe for most of my life to visit my teams worldwide and the suppliers. Jet lag, stomach issues, time pressure, sleep issues, due to the bed or the inability to open a window, then the time I take away from my direct reports to spend with me in the evenings they could spend with their families. I could go on and on. Take a good look at the newest way to communicate if you think your people need to connect and understand what is out there. Metaverse, Apple Vision, telepresence, 3D virtual environments, full features virtual event platforms, WebEx, Most of the simpler stuff like Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp video is good enough for quick interactions. And until you have company secret discussions, relax. There is so much traffic going on through the platforms that their encrypted standards will ensure that your competition will not get an inkling of what is being discussed. So, since the pandemic, we all know what is possible. Pity if we forget it and increase our carbon footprint due to wrongly stated convenience. Even meeting customers or supplier executives can be done online, since the other side is used to this technology as well. Heck, many of them don't want to see you in real life. So, who, for example, still has a metric in sales about number of customer visits is, quite honestly, living in the 20th century. Next, implement a sustainable travel policy. You can download and implement a policy from the web. Just one caution: consider the organization and unofficial ways your company culture works. Do not get the full Monty directly if there are different culture rules. You will cut into the nerve cells of your organization, and innovation and quality can falter. And just a word to the wise. This sentence in the travel approval form, "Have you considered video calls?" is not the bit's worth that it is written upon in your online form. I recommend data mining of all employee travel behavior, including management board members. Give them 3 strikes if they are working outside the parameters that you have set, and then wish them a lovely rest of their life in another company if they do not comply. Just doing this once with a few people and communicating it widely will have the desired effect for the whole company. Further, we can talk about low-carbon transportation options. If you offer transportation to your workers, use carbon-neutral buses. If you incentivize people as part of their remuneration packages, incentivize only carbon-neutral transit. Rail, tram, bicycle, EV cars. If you have an executive lease car scheme, it should be clear no manager drives a transportation device which consumes non-renewable sources. Full stop. But I implore you, get rid of these lease car schemes, because it just causes unnecessary work internally and is very expensive. Trust me on that. I've worked in 5 different industries. We had many of these schemes, and all of them were miserable, even when you looked at it in terms of benchmarks. Finally, offset unavoidable travel emissions. Be specific here. Make it clear to employees that if they travel, you have to invest in carbon offsets, forestry projects, clean energy projects, or blue carbon projects. Make it clear how much it costs and what the impact is on your margin.
Many struggle with a category under Scope 3, employee commuting. How should they track it, and how can they get employees to reduce carbon emissions? Well, it is less complicated than it sounds. Firstly, as discussed before, companies can offer remote work options.
Many firms have asked their employees to return to work since the pandemic. I wonder if it is because people need to be in the same offices to be effective, which quite honestly I doubt after decades of sitting in offices, or whether the firm could not establish an excellent external work environment for their personnel. A bit more work into the technological capabilities to ensure productive environments could help. People who cannot handle these environments, quite honestly, should not be employed in the first place. It is a new skill that, among other things, reduces CO2 footprint. You can provide incentives for public transportation or carpooling if needed. And what about sponsoring a carpooling app that is best for your company if the people really need to get to work? Another way to incentivize your people to commute climate neutrally is to install electric vehicle charging stations. Having EV chargers in your parking lots and in front of your buildings is also great marketing to show you are heading towards sustainability. And why not implement even a cycle-to-work scheme? It will not only reduce CO2 in your Scope 3, but also improve the health of your staff. But make sure to provide showers in the building and free towels and amenities. Your employees will be even more motivated to work for you.
In Scope 3 are as well all upstream leased assets.
You would have guessed energy-efficient lease spaces. For your distribution or shops, only rent or lease greenhouse gas neutral locations or those that will be green by date X, which you need to define. Engage the landlords to improve building efficiency. Have your own audits done for free with the landlords and agree on building efficiency. Ensure that you build this into your lease agreements. Otherwise, the landlords can play deaf and blind to your suggestions. And implement energy-saving practices in these leased facilities. Same here, bake it into the contracts, maybe align them with your progress in your own buildings. And consider relocating to more sustainable buildings or less buildings if you can find ways to do your work online. Again, we're not saying tomorrow, but over time, everything changes. So ensure that your real estate department looks out for properties that can help you here. Give them targets and let everyone in the company knows that these poor people in real estate do not have the whole company against them if they're just less than prime locations.
The next subcategory is downstream transportation and distribution.
Optimize packaging to reduce weight and volume. A revolution has happened in the packaging space. Whether it is pallets, packaging materials, or film material, the world has changed. If you still ship as 5 or 10 years ago, you are missing the boat entirely. You need new packaging engineers on your staff who know the art of the possible. Clearly as well, use more efficient transportation modes, which we talked already. Collaborate with logistics partners to reduce emissions, same as downstream and upstream. But here, you have to engage with your suppliers and bake it into their contracts. And then, implement last-mile delivery optimization. This is all about having great route optimization, delivery consolidation, and parcel optimization software. Traffic patterns, pickup points, and shrinking empty spaces can make a huge difference. We talked about this before. It's easy to get a 50% greenhouse gas emission by just filling up the containers.
Number 10 in the subcategories is processing of sold products.
Design products for energy-efficient processing. Design products for energy-efficient processing. Give you an example. Develop compostable audio accessories like the Pella case, which produces phone and AirPod cases that generate 30% lower carbon emissions during production than conventional cases. Or create products from natural and energy-efficient materials like bamboo. Due to its fast growth and natural properties, bamboo can be processed with minimal energy input. Then provide guidelines for low-emission processing to customers. Offer detailed instructions for eco-friendly use and disposal of products, similar to how Virtue Brush, for example, provides information on their bamboo toothbrushes. As well, include information on low-energy cleaning and maintenance processes for products, such as guidelines for washing reusable items like, take the Swedish stockings, recycling hosiery at lower temperature. You can also collaborate with customers to improve their processes. Implement a recycling program, as we said, Swedish Stocking Recycling Club, for example, again, where customers can return used products for recycling, encouraging a closed-loop system. You can offer more sustainable product alternatives. Provide alternatives made from eco-friendly materials such as, again, another company, Oakwood's office accessory created using natural materials like wood, core, and wool. Or develop products that reduce waste in the customer processes, like the company EcoFlow's solar energy device that allow customers to use renewable energy sources.
Number 11 is the category use of sold products.
Start by improving product energy efficiency. For example, develop energy-efficient appliances like the company Bosch Home Appliances, which are designed to consume less energy during use. For instance, the washing machines use what they call eco-silence drive motors that are more efficient and quieter. Create smart home devices that optimize energy use, such as smart thermostats that learn user habits and automatically adjust temperature settings for optimal efficiency. How about genuinely designing products for longevity and repairability? Yes, you will need a new pricing policy and marketing for this, but why not? As well, if not already done, play with modular design principles like the company Fairphone and their smartphones, which are designed to easily be repaired and upgraded by customers, extending the product's lifespan. You can as well offer long warranties and repair services, which the company Patagonia use in their ironclad guarantee, which encourages customers to repair rather than replace products. Like before as well, in this category, provide user guidelines for sustainable product use. To extend the lifespan of a product, include detailed care instructions, such as proper washing and dyeing techniques for clothing, and consider developing apps for online resources that guide users on how to use products more efficiently, like smart washing machine apps that suggest optimal wash cycles based on load size and fabric types. Finally, offer low-carbon alternatives or upgrades. Provide energy-efficient upgrades for existing products, such as LED light bulb replacements for older lighting fixtures, and develop product lines that use renewable energy sources, like solar-powered outdoor lighting or USB rechargeable batteries for electronics. And these are just examples. Look at your products and get a couple of smart kids together and let them think through what is the art of the possible on your side. I'm pretty sure you will come up with much better ideas as well with your brilliant people.
We are getting to the end of the Scope 3 net zero solutions. Now let's talk about end-of-life treatment of sold products.
We mentioned some of this already, but let's go deeper. Design products for recyclability or biodegradability by, for example, developing compostable products, or create products from monomaterials to improve recyclability, such as Adidas Futurecraft, loop running shoes made entirely from recyclable thermoplastic polyurethane. Consider to implement take-back programs. Establish a trade-in or buy-back program for electronics, similar like Apple's trade-in program, which allows customers to return all devices for recycling or credit towards new purchases. Think about partnering with recycling facilities. They collaborate with specialized recycling facilities to ensure proper handling of complex products. For example, Dell partners with various recyclers to process e-waste from their take-back program. If you produce and sell more locally, start working with local recycling centers to create collection points for products, making it easy for customers to recycle items properly. Educate then your customers on proper disposal methods. Here are online resources or apps that can guide customers to proper disposal methods for different product components, such as H&M in-store recycling program, which educates customers on textile recycling. Having a QR code in the clothing or at your products that customers can just photograph and get to your site can be great. And one small piece of advice: let the website the customers get to not being owned and designed by sustainability or engineering folks. They are great people, but they make things often quite boring. Have some snazzy marketing folks take the content and interpret it in your way.
The third to last category in Scope 3 is downstream leased assets.
Lease out energy-efficient assets by offering energy-efficient buildings for lease, such as those certified by LEED, L-E-E-D, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or similar green building standards. Consider providing electric or hybrid vehicles in car leasing programs, as many car rental companies are now doing to reduce emissions from their fleets. Here, as said before, try to avoid owning or leasing vehicles. Other people can do this more efficient than you. Remember, your back end is other people's front end. As well here, provide guidelines for sustainable use to lessees by developing comprehensive user manuals for leased equipment that include best practices for energy-efficient operations, similar to how some companies provide energy-saving tips for home appliances. Create online training modules or webinars for lessees on how to optimize the energy use of leased assets, such as proper temperature settings for HVAC systems in leased office spaces. Naturally, implement maintenance programs to ensure optimal performances. You can use IoT, Internet of Things sensors and predictive maintenance technologies to monitor asset performance and schedule maintenance proactively, reducing downtime and improving energy efficiency. There's a lot going on in this field that has already been done. It's time to copy and paste, I think. And why not offer incentives for sustainable practices by lessees? You can implement a green lease program that provides financial incentives or reduced rates for lessees who meet specific sustainability targets, such as energy use reduction or waste minimization. Or how about a recognition program that highlights and rewards lessees who demonstrate exceptional sustainability practices in the use of leased assets, similar to how property management companies recognize tenants for green initiatives.
We nearly got it. Let's just do franchises.
Franchises. Start with setting sustainability standards for franchisees. Implement a comprehensive sustainability program like McDonald's Scale for Good initiatives, which sets specific targets for franchisees on issues like packaging, recycling, and energy efficiency. Develop a green certification program for franchisees, similar to how some hotel chains have internal sustainability certifications for their properties. Again, like before, provide training on emission reduction strategies and think about a sustainability toolkit for franchisees that include best practices, case studies, and resources for implementing emission reduction strategies in their operations. You can offer support for implementing renewable energy solutions. You might want to establish partnerships with renewable energy providers to offer discounted rates or installation support for franchisees, similar to how some companies have corporate agreements with solar panel installers. Or provide financial incentives or low-interest loans to franchisees for investing in renewable energy infrastructure such as solar panels or wind turbines.
Last but not least, there is the subcategory of investments. Here, financial institutions will have many opportunities over the following years.
Start with implementing sustainability investment policies that you train your people with, like J. Safra Saracens, which integrates environmental, social, and governance considerations into the investment process across all asset classes. Adopt clear principles of responsible investment, which is called PRI, which offer a menu of possible actions for incorporating ESG issues into investment practices. Again, look in the news and out of your window. Realize that the world is changing due to climate change, and man-made greenhouse gas emissions are the reason for it. Then breathe in 3 times and start divesting from high-emission industries. You could follow the Insurance Access example of exiting investments in the coal industry. They will exit by 2030 within the OECD and by 2040 in the rest of the world. Or implement exclusion strategies that avoid investments in companies with high carbon footprints or those involved in controversial activities. Start engaging with investee companies on their emission reduction strategies. Use active ownership practices like UBS Asset Management's approach of empowering companies globally through active stewardship and engagement. And then start increasing investments in low carbon and climate solution companies. Develop sustainable focused investment strategies that target companies providing solutions to climate change and other environmental challenges. Again, look at AXA. They align investment portfolios with climate goals, such as AXA's commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement's objective of limiting global warming to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius, although that ship has sailed, but still it's good to maintain a strong hold on this.
This was quite a long session. But no one has ever said that you humans getting away from a CO2 culture would be a walk in the park. You need to get off the drug that kept you happy for 150 years.
When we discuss this with our clients, I often see their eyes glaze over. I often hear, "Daniel, this is all great, but who on earth in my shop should do all of this? We also, or foremost, have to make revenue and margins. I cannot work on all this stuff all the time. I have to run a business." Well, the good news is that you do not have to do this alone. Each topic we discuss needs 2 to 5 smart people in the respective departments linked to the point. Not full time, but as a job enhancement project. They need proper targets, a financial advisor from your controlling team, and project management. Here you need overall 3, maybe 5 people who hold the initiatives together. Then do a monthly Giro fix with the board members in charge, and every quarter a report out by the board member in charge in the board meeting. You will be greenhouse gas neutral until 2030. I promise you that. Just divide and conquer like Julius Caesar, Machiavelli, and Napoleon did. Delegate and conquer is probably the better word here. Use the brilliant minds in your organization and celebrate their successes openly so that everyone in your firm would like to be part of the winning team. As we wrap up today's episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues, let's take a moment to recap some of the key points we've discussed. We began with an overview of the 3 greenhouse gas emission scopes, just in general. then highlighted the distinct characteristics and importance of any sustainability strategy, from understanding the direct emissions within Scope 1 to grappling with the broader impact of Scope 3. We aim to uncover the complexity and opportunities within each. We then explored pathways to net zero, including the strategic steps necessary to create effective sustainability plans.
We hope this episode provided valuable insights and actionable strategies you can apply on your journey toward net zero. We're eager to hear from you, our listeners, your questions, thoughts, and any feedback you might have. Please feel free to reach out or comment on our website or social media.
This was a lot of stuff and probably the longest episode we ever did. If you'd like to reread it, as I mentioned before, about areas that are relevant for you, go via our website to the podcast area, click into this episode to the transcript, which is in the lower part of the screen. You will there find a cleaned up version of what Amy and I talked about. Thank you for joining us today and keeping on it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Supply Chain Dialogues. Please subscribe to Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or any other central podcast platform if you do. And if you are a subscriber, tell someone who is in charge or in the midst of getting to net zero, like your CEO. If you're interested in learning more about this or other topics that we covered, you can sign up for online or face-to-face training, which is available on our company website. You can as well book a chat with me to explore the art of the possible for your company. With that, stay safe, be bold, and see you in 2 weeks. These are the Supply Chain Dialogues, produced and copyrighted by Helmig Advisory in 2024.